Arizona, I cannot wait for the Big 12. And again, I know you got to say what you got to say here, but man, that's going to be a gauntlet next year. I mean, just look at Houston. Houston is the number 2 ranked team in the country. They go into Iowa State and lose, and nobody's really shocked by it because of just how tough that is. I mean, you go from Houston to Kansas, and forget, other schools like a Kansas State, like we said, an Iowa State. This is going to be something where Arizona's had bye weeks in the past where you played some teams that just aren't that good. That's about to change in a big way.
It is. And I had this conversation. I did a Colorado game a few weeks ago with Tad Boyle. And, Tad played at Kansas. And then when he coached at Colorado, I think the first year he coached there, they were in the Big 12 before they joined the Pac-12. And I mean, I was asking him about not just, and I think you're pointing out something, just how good the teams are, right? They're just deep. They're a deep conference. They're really good they're outstanding at the top. Kansas, Baylor, Houston, but they're just deep too. You keep going throughout the conference. Everybody can play. They play physical. But the thing Tad told me, he's like, people have no idea how hard it is to play at every one of those venues. And he's like, look, when Oregon's going, when Oregon State's going, yeah, those are all tough venues to play. But he's like, these teams, they sell out when they're not going. They sell out when they don't have a good team. And he goes, you go into every one of them, and it's hard to play. And he mentioned specifically Ames, Iowa. This is the first one he mentioned. He's like, you go into Ames, Iowa, you don't even think about them. And look what happened the other day.
And I think what Arizona fans got to realize is that just because you have maybe 6 losses in the Big 12 doesn't mean that is necessarily a bad thing when you're playing, when you're playing 8 top 25 teams every other week. Well, every other week. I mean, you're not playing 4 games a week, but it's really going to toughen you up. Also, it's something I was thinking about yesterday is the most, and we didn't even mention Baylor, who won a national title like 3 years ago. What have they done? But watching what Kansas has been able to do for the last almost 2 decades with Bill Self, I believe is the most impressive streak in all of sports. Because now, granted, I know that it stopped, but still being able to run that gauntlet for 2 straight decades. And like you said, like Tad Boyle said, you're going into tough environments. Man, that's impressive, Matt.
So what have they won? 20 in a row?
It was, I think it ended up at 19 or something.
19?
Something like that, yeah.
That's insane. I mean, it's insane. And their coach, man, that KU coach is just he is just unbelievably consistent, and that's what the best coaches are. They have everyone accountable. To your point earlier, talking about just being, tough all the time and being on edge, and he's really good at that. He's good at everything. They get good players. And by the way, a lot of their players have not been. They don't always have the best players.
For sure.
They don't always have McDonald's All-Americans. I mean, they do a lot, but they've taken some guys that are a lot of like mid guys, and they make them really good.
You know who he reminds me a lot of, and one of the best games I've ever seen was Arizona, Illinois with Bill Self and I almost said Lute Walton. Lute Olson in the Elite Eight. He reminds me a lot of Lute. I think a lot of people say, Mike Bibby, and Mike Bibby was his big-time prospect. Yes. But let's be honest here. A lot of the guys that you built this program on, your Steve Kerrs, your Damon Stoudemire's, your Miles Simons, your Reggie Geary's, guys that weren't quite good enough for UCLA, Gilbert Arenas, players like that. His ability to be able to find players, I think, is very similar to Lute in that regard. And the roster construction is also very impressive.
It's super impressive. And like that list goes on forever, right? Judd Bushler and Channing Frye didn't come out as a
Matt Muehlbach because you were a top 30 recruit. Get out of here, Matt Muehlbach.
I underachieved. I was a bust.
Oh, no, that's not true. John Schuster and I were both having some spirits one time with somebody who would definitely know. And he said if Matt Muehlbach didn't have injuries, he would have played in the NBA. Matt Muehlbach, you do not get off off of that one. Go ahead.
I think it's their ability. I think that's a super good comp of him and Lute. I mean, I think they're super similar. Again, just consistent on how they coach, how they develop. They get good kids, and when you're not, like, if you don't fall in line, you're gone. Like, and you don't play. So, and then I think a pretty amazing ability to have the guy like a Judd Bushler, but then also have a guy that's a McDonald's All-American, right? Mm-hmm. And Bill Self's done that with guys like Wiggins and other number one picks.
I almost said Frank Lucas from American Gangster of Denzel Washington. Frank Mason, Devontae Graham.
Yes.
These are National
Yes.
Player of the Year types, and one's committed to what, like George Mason, and the other one's committed to Appalachian State.
I know, and it's crazy. It's crazy evaluation too, like really understanding what those guys can do for the program. So.